and therefore made some assumptions. But now you're breaking everything I've ever thought about this song. Welcome to Therate Podcast. We are here to provide a therapist perspective on Taylor Swift's musical mental health themes. We're not therapy for you or Taylor, but we do hope you enjoy this conversation. Katie, before I pass this conversation on to you, I'm curious if we need to take a moment to see what's on your shirt.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'll tilt the screen down. It just says Taylor Swift Experience. So
Oh
I went to
my
this
goodness.
and it's got like the little hands and we've got some hearts. We've got a disco ball, 13.
Um,
Yeah,
I just realized as we started recording that you were wearing that. Do you want to tell us about it?
sure. A couple months ago, a friend of mine who's a Swiftie invited me to go to this out in Cannonsburg. So Ashley and I are based out of Michigan. And so there was like a Taylor Swift themed night. And so I went to that and they had these t-shirts there and I was like, I have to get one. So
That is so cool. Okay, maybe we need to have like a Swifty chat about that experience another time, because that sounds amazing. But today we are talking about the song I Can Fix Him. No, really, I can. And Katie chose this song, and I am dying to know why you chose it. I'm so excited.
yeah, I find this song so compelling because Taylor wrote a song about actively ignoring red flags due to having a savior complex. Like she does not pull any punches. Like she is so open about the fact that this is literally like, I see the red flags, I'm ignoring them because I can fix them.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that is so relatable for so many people. She's so real for it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. That's so true. Yeah. I love how this song plays out, but I'm looking forward to hearing what questions you would ask if this song were a person coming into your therapy office.
Yes, yes. I will totally get to the questions part, but I think I would just maybe add a little bit more that part of what made me pick this song is because it's about getting what you want and then realizing that it's not good for you. Also very relatable for a lot of people who hasn't had that experience. And then the second note I want to highlight is that this is a song about her outcome of realizing that he's no good for her, because it literally ends with her saying like, oh, I can't fix him after all, but it doesn't describe her process. And so I think before we talk about the song, we have to differentiate outcome from process. Um, and I just think that's a really important observation. So going to your point of like, what questions would I ask? I really want to know, what do you love slash find compelling about this person? She is not portraying the subject of this song in a kind light. Like she was portraying this person as being vulgar, as being crass, kind of like loud, but not in a socially acceptable or good way necessarily, but like obnoxious, really. And so I'm just curious, like this is clearly not describing the person that you fell in love with. What is it that you find compelling about him?
Yeah. Yeah.
That yeah seemed so pregnant with like meaning. Can you please say more?
I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but I think those questions are really valid. Like, what is it? Like, what hold did this person have? Like, what? Yeah, everything you just said,
Yeah.
just really
Yeah.
strongly want to also know.
Which I think goes to like my earlier point that this song is about an outcome, not about her process.
Hmm.
Because she's looking back on it and almost singing the song from the perspective of other people. Like now I see what other people have seen all along, and now I'm like singing it, even though the song, she kind of like like sings it almost as if she's in process, but you can tell from what she's saying that she's not in process, she's on the other side.
Hmm.
Um, and so I would want to know, like, what was it like to get feedback from other people about him? And I think that if the song were a client, like, and we're talking about somebody's process, um, of being in some kind of situation. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a partnership, maybe it's work, maybe it's family, who knows? But like, what is it like for other people to like comment on this and have negative things to say? And what does that feel like to you? Does that kick up defenses? Does that kick up a part of you that agrees with that? Is there a part of you that's in denial? Like, what is your experience receiving feedback?
That is really good. And as someone who doesn't like to be told what to do, that is speaking to me in a whole other way.
Do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, I think there are so many times, okay, people who are like me, if you're out there, you don't like being told what to do, right? But then like sometimes people have really good advice that can be ignored.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, you don't know better than me. You want to live this
Mhm.
life of like, stop trying to tell me what to do. But then also they wind up being right. And that's like the worst part of it all. So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh my word, without a doubt.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I would also like ask the question, like it sounds like you're convincing yourself that this relationship can work. Like when the song talks about like propping up a halo and like, I can bring that halo out. Is it true? And then how is that true? Like what kind of mental gymnastics, and I wouldn't ask it that way, but essentially, what kind of mental gymnastics are you doing right now to try and make this work?
That's the song summed up, basically, right? Like, yeah, I love that question.
Yeah. Like, what was the journey that made you change from saying that you can fix him to saying that you can't? And
Mhm.
was that like a moment? Was that a series of moments? Was that a specific person's feedback or a series of people's feedback? And I think that, that's always individual to like every person, like their own story. If you're in a situation like this, maybe it's a particular person who said that and you could hear it from them, or maybe it's just the fact that this was now the fourth person to say something. Like, but when do you begin to listen? And then at that point, when do you take it seriously? Because it's one thing to listen, it's another thing to take it serious and respond.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, those are really, really good, Katie.
Are there any questions that you would ask?
Yeah, so I had a little bit of a different take on this song. So now that you're explaining your viewpoint on it, it makes a little bit more sense to me. But yeah, I think it's similar. So anyway, I'll just tell you. What was it like to feel embarrassed or judged for your dating choice?
Ooh, good question.
And I think this goes back to the theme of maybe putting some boundaries in place with fans, right? Because
Hmm.
there was some situations where fans were maybe speaking out a little bit louder than was necessary. What made you feel like you were the only one who could change him? I think there's some pride in this song. Maybe
Yes.
not just some, maybe a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I'd be curious about that. If you could change someone, do you really love them or do you want them for who you want them to be?
Oh, there it is. There's the fire. Like, I think maybe like another like parable way of asking this in the context of like a romantic relationship is, do you love the love or do you love the person?
Yeah, or their potential or the idea of them, but maybe
Hmm.
not them as a full human. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
what I had down for that because there's so many ways that we could take this.
Yeah. What are one of the ways that like your mind immediately like goes to of like places like where you could take it?
Yeah, okay. So there's the part in the song where it says, I don't need your prayers. I can fix him, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't need anything. And so the pride is just running so deep with this that it feels like, do we also need to talk about the actual amount of power that you have over somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And what made you feel like you have that power over someone? Um, so yeah, those are some things that are
Yeah.
running through my mind, and I think we'll get
Yeah.
to more of that theme
Yeah.
with the other
Yeah.
questions too. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to like explore maybe a little bit further at some point this idea of pride and like in what like way that you mean that word. Like is that in like a moral sense or just like a human sense of like, oh, I take pride in like what I've done or in work that I've done? Like maybe like what kind of pride are you noticing in this song?
I think when I reference the song and the pride that it's maybe showing, um, at least to me, the way that I'm viewing it is like, I'm the only one who could do this. Nobody else could.
Mm-hmm.
And and I don't think it's like an I'm so great as a human type of pride, but I think it's like a like watch what I can do. I don't need you. I can be on my own type of
Mm-hmm.
pride that's like leave me alone. I can make this work on my own.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think like where I think you might be hearing that is the lyric, I could see it from a mile away, a perfect case for my certain skill set.
Yeah. Or I'll show you heaven if you'll be an angel.
Yes. Yes. Literally. Literally.
I'm
But your
just
good Lord
wondering,
doesn't need to lift a finger.
right. And if we are thinking of ourselves as good, better, important enough that even the Lord does not need to do anything, I think maybe we're
Mhm.
overemphasizing the amount of power that we have.
You know, it's interesting hearing you say that because I think I heard that in a self-deprecating way.
Okay,
Like,
say more about that.
so I actually hear this in terms of sarcasm. Like, she's
Okay.
being really hard on herself. So, like, not like a literally, like, I can fix him, but more just like, oh, I'm trying to think of like an example of this, but like, um, I don't know. Let's say like you're walking in from like the car with your arms loaded full of groceries, and somebody's like, "Oh, can I help you?" And you're like, "Nope, I got it." Like I am stubbornly convinced that I will carry every load of like every bag with me, right? And I don't need any help to do it. But
Uh-huh.
like it's obvious that I clearly don't have it. Like groceries are falling out of bags and like my arms are like there's red marks. So I almost kind of see it as like a comical like sarcastic, like, "No, really, like, God doesn't even need to do anything because I've got this." Like, "Ha ha."
Yeah. My question would be, what stops that person from accepting the help in that moment?
Right. That's a great question, and I think that that's actually, like I don't think she answers that necessarily in the song, but I think that that's what you're saying is the outcome of the song of, like, recognizing there was something deeply flawed in me that I felt like this was not only something I could do, but something I should do.
Yeah. 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 I think that's an interesting way to put it too. And I think there's yeah, there's this other piece of me who's also like, she's writing this after the fact.
Mhm.
In the moment, was she saying still, no, I've got this. Let me do it.
I
Or
think
was she
so.
saying, no, really, I got this? I don't know. I guess we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think maybe that's the genius of the song is that it can go both ways. Like you're saying, like for real saying, no, I can handle a dangerous man. Really, I've got this. And then like on the flip side, almost in a tone of sarcasm, being like, oh yeah, I sure had that. Look at me. Like you know, when you fall flat on your face and be like, yep. I did it.
Yeah.
But so obviously it was a spectacular fail. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I kind of hear that a little bit like as the song ends, like, she says, they shook their heads saying, God help her when I told him he's my man. But your good Lord didn't need to fix him. You didn't need to lift a finger. I can fix him. No, really, I can. And then it goes, whoa, maybe I can't. So I think that whole like, stanza kind of speaks to this transition of like, people are saying, no, you can't. And then you're going, sure, I can. Oh, wait, no.
Yeah. 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 So that was a really good conversation, but I don't know where we are.
I know, right? I think we're on
So,
to recommendations.
okay. Sounds great. Do you want to share yours?
Absolutely. So a recommendation that I would maybe ask or discuss is what are your values and boundaries that you may be crossing in order to stay in the relationship with someone that is dangerous, quote unquote, to quote the song to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's similar to the one recommendation that I had, in addition to like, if it's not a good fit, just let
Hmm.
it go.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's why I love this song is because it's a song about tension. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she's like, and I think this would be my recommendation, like explore the parts of yourself that are in tension. There's a part that clearly wants to use a skill set that you know that you have,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think, and I just want to say that's a great thing, like to have the skill set of developing potential and bringing potential out of people. If you put that in the context of somebody in charge of like, developing young children or a manager or a leader, like we absolutely want the skill set of developing potential. And in the context of a romantic relationship or an intimate partner, right? Um, maybe a little more questionable. So that's one part. The other part is one that recognizes that he's dangerous and that she has stepped outside of her capacity in order to quote unquote fix him.
Yeah. And I think so I want to add a little bit more to that too. This is a spicy episode.
Bring it, bring it. I'm here for it.
So I agree with you that it is a good skill set to have to bring out actual potential in somebody when you see it, helping people grow. It's what makes a good manager. It's what makes a good parent, right? Like here's some things that like you already have. Let's increase that so that it's like used for good, right?
Hmm.
You can learn so much more. I think this song has a bit of a different take to me, from what I'm hearing, because it seems like she's trying to um, find potential that doesn't exist in order
Oh,
to serve her
mm-hmm.
purpose.
Hmm. So
That's
like
how
some
I took it.
manipulation?
Kinda.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, right? Like that's the fun part about art is you don't always know what the
Right.
actual inspiration was.
Right. Right.
But was there an actual world in which this was going to work?
Yeah, and see, I think there's like a glimpse of that in the lyric when she says, his hand so callous from his pistol softly traces hearts on my face. Which, when I first heard the lyric, the first thing that came to my mind was lover, because there's a heart traced over her eye on the album of Lover.
I never thought about that, Katie.
So, your mouth like dropped open, like you're just like mind blown for a second. Feels kind of good. I
I
think I just blew Ashley's
need
mind.
I feel like I need some time to process that. Yeah, there are so many reasons I did not think about that. Yeah,
Well,
that's a
right,
really
because
good
like
point.
that that album is like about Joe, so far as we know. Like that's the assumption, right? Even like with London Boy, pretty obvious ode to Joe. But just the idea of like this softness, right? Like the intimacy of somebody who's so close to you that they could gently like trace a heart on your face. Like there's such a tenderness in that. So I feel like we're getting a glimpse right there of like there's something very sweet in this person that she's experiencing. But then she juxtaposes this with a pistol, right? Like your hand is calloused from fighting, from like weaponizing, and that same calloused hand that is used to holding a weapon is also the same hand that can show me tender love.
I pictured this song being about someone different. And therefore made some assumptions. But now you're breaking everything I've ever thought about this song.
I don't know. And again, we don't
We don't
actually
know.
know who the
We
song is
don't know.
about, right? It's left up to that creative imagination. But even without having the information on who the song is about, I think that that lyric really speaks to the part of her that the two parts intention. And so, oftentimes when we find ourselves, like we as people find ourselves in situations where everybody looking on the outside can say, oh, girl, like leave him, or like this relationship is toxic, or you should be done. But you're on the inside going, but you don't know this other part that I feel. And so, like, you are in tension. You can't just step away because there is something good and beautiful here, even if it's so small in comparison to all the crap. But it's just enough to make this a real war. And that's what I love that she explores in this song, and that she's doing so, naming, I think, some manipulation. Now let's talk about manipulation for a second, right? Because I think when people hear that word, they instantly begin thinking of calculation, like something that's calculated, something that is abusive, harmful. And I don't necessarily believe that that's always true about manipulation. I think that can be true. It can be like a cognitive, like deliberate choice to like, get something from somebody else in an underhand way. But I think it can also just be a way that we're meeting our needs subconsciously. I don't
Yeah,
even,
I don't think manipulation is always a specific choice that's being made on
right,
purpose.
right.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like this line kind of like dances on that line. Like, is this conscious? Is it not conscious? Because it's conscious now on the outcome, but was it conscious in the process? I don't really
Hmm.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know what to do with myself. I think I will be chewing on that for the next weeks.
Okay.
That
I
was
look
really
forward to
good.
having more conversations about this. So,
Um, yeah, well, yeah, the recommendation that I had was if it's not a good fit, oh well, carry on.
just leave. Just leave.
But like, okay, so I think what you said is absolutely valid. I think also people sometimes tend to stay a little bit longer than is necessary
Hmm.
for the sake of staying, or they haven't cheated on me, so I should stay. Right. And so I think there's also something to be said for like things being a good fit. But with that said, we can just move on because you shared some really good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have just found that in my own life or when I sit with clients and, you know, they or myself am in a situation where I have to make a decision that feels really hard to me and one that maybe I know where it should be, but I just can't get there, that there is more productive work done in the wrestling of my parts that are pulling me in different directions. I'm learning to listen and discern that for myself than there is to rushing to a conclusion. And that's what I think
Yeah.
this song does so well, is it just brings you right into that tension.
Yeah. You said your parts. Can you tell us more about like what you mean about that?
Yeah, yeah. So Dr. Richard Schwartz is a a scholar out of Harvard, and he has pioneered what's called IFS, or internal family systems, which is the idea that every person is made up of many different parts. And we hear this reflected in our language like, oh, a part of me wants this, a part of me wants that. And so Dr. Schwartz takes that very seriously and says, what if those parts were actual components of who you are as a person? These parts have ages, these parts have roles, these parts have desires. And that part of living a fully integrated life is learning how to listen to all of the parts that are managing us. The part of us maybe that wants to be loved, the part of us that is afraid of being loved, and then you get the point. So when I use the word parts, that's where I'm drawing that language from.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
Now, of course.
Um, yeah, okay. What would you validate about this experience?
Yeah, I would just validate how real it is that many of us stay in situations, jobs, relationships, trying to fix what's broken. Like that is a
Yeah.
very relatable experience. And, you know, there's a lot of judgment I think that can come on people for the choices that they make. Like, why would you stay in a relationship with this person? Why would you stay at this job? Um, but I would just say, like, there are reasons, even if those reasons aren't the ones ultimately that lead you to the conclusion of staying long term, they were reasons you had at that moment that were real enough that led you to that place. So there's no point in judging and criticizing that. Learn
Hmm.
from it, yes, maybe make different decisions, absolutely, but never a need for condemnation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so true. Yeah. Um,
And what about you? What would you normalize and validate?
yeah, I think so. I put loving the thought of who you think someone can be rather than who they are. Um, And I think also based on what you said too, like just to add to that, oftentimes those things that on the outside can look like it would be really easy or you really should leave, it's often meeting an emotional need for that person. So there's that like piece of it where maybe that person is like also meeting this like need for attention or this need for love in some way or care in some
Mhm.
way or financial assistance in some way,
Yes.
that you can't just break away from
Yes.
and pretend like you'll be fine. Like there are so many
Mhm.
things that you have to think about when you're leaving a job. Like, will I have insurance? Will I be able to make my bills? What other job would I actually be able
Yes.
to get? Or whatever the situation is. So yeah, that's a really good point too
Yeah,
that you made.
excellent, excellent point. I love that. Yeah. In regards to challenging the song as a client, I would really push back at some point on the idea that you can fix somebody. I would explore the self-awareness that is alluded to in the song of my perfect skill set, seeing it a mile away. So that speaks to like your ability to like see it, know that you're seeing it, know what to do about it. And then actually making that person a candidate to practice that skill on
Mm-hmm.
and challenge whether or not this is the appropriate time, place, or person or situation to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really good. Um, and then I would also say, um, yeah, it's similar to what you said, just being realistic. Like
Hmm.
there's something to be said for like, yeah, maybe there is potential in somebody. Maybe there it like we said before, maybe there is good stuff that could come out of this relationship. Is it
Hmm.
worth it? Is kind of the question.
Yes, yes. Like, what does it cost you in exchange for that? I think like when I hear like worth it, like that's really what you're kind of getting at right there is like,
Hmm.
is this cost something that I can pay and live with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you encourage this person?
Oh, I would just want to affirm that the part of you that wants to make change, that wants to see something good for another person is beautiful.
Mm,
And never make that the problem. Like the choices that you've made, we can evaluate whether or not those were helpful or not, but never the part of you that wants to cultivate good in another person or to see something good for them. And I think that's the
hmm.
beauty in seeing potential is like you know what could be.
Yeah.
And the flip side is we need to live within your own limits and boundaries. And that's another encouragement of recognizing that I'm in charge of only my choices. And part of growth is moving forward in my own choices without stopping, pausing, or like groveling for other people to join me. Like,
Hmm.
I need to be able to move forward whether or not people agree or affirm with me. Um, and then I would also encourage and kind of observe that the part of ourselves that can get us into trouble is also this same part that holds so much capacity for cultivating beauty and goodness in ourselves and in others. So it's kind of the flip side, right? Like there's a shadow side, there's a light side, and I think that um, we have to embrace that nuance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good, Katie. Yeah,
What
I feel
about
like
for you?
yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say, I feel like nuance is the word of this podcast episode, right? Like the nuance of it
Mhm.
all is where like a lot of this is coming from. Yeah, I was going to say like it can be hard to know the depth of an issue until you're in it. So maybe from
Mhm.
afar, it's like, oh, well, all they have to do is X, Y, and Z. But then you don't realize that maybe they're doing those things because they're meeting an emotional need and they
Yes.
can't give that up yet. Um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. And then I would also say you're clearly not afraid of a challenge, and I respect it.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. There's spunk, right? Like you're up for
Yeah.
it. Like kudos to
Um,
you, Tay.
yeah. Way to give it a good old college try.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then I had an extra thought, because the ending is so vulnerable after like what I viewed as pride
Hmm.
throughout the song, and that vulnerability of, whoa, maybe I can't. To like publicly also admit that you weren't able to do that after all of this like extra stuff of like, no, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. That takes
Yeah.
bravery too.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're so spot on in saying that because I mean, I kind of framed it this way, like, you know, recognizing I had no business doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And y'all were right, and I was in the wrong, and I'm just gonna own that now. Like, that's a very
Owning it.
courageous thing to do.
Yeah, that's hard. That's the hardest part. Taking accountability for the part that you had in any
Hmm.
relationship is hard.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the way that the song is written, which is essentially only highlighting with like the tiniest glimpse of like the goodness of the relationship, like seeing, the subject of the song as other people have portrayed him or have talked about him or have seen him. Now I'm seeing him that way too. Like there's an internalization of like, oh, I see what you were saying. I get it now. Like, whew,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Well, this has been a
Well,
very good conversation, Katie.
yes, it sure has. It sure has. Hey, listeners, thank you so much for coming. We're so happy that you've joined us for our conversation. Our next episode, we will be rolling out Fortnite featuring Post Malone, which is one of Ashley's picks. So if you want to stay connected, please follow us on Instagram at Therate Podcast. You can also request songs for us to cover by emailing us at theratepodcast@gmail.com. And then don't forget to hit up some of our playlists that we've created on Spotify so that whenever we cover a song, you can listen to those and then just jam out with us. Thank you again to Jeremy for editing this podcast. We'll see y'all at the next episode.
Bye.